Well, welcome and thank you so much everyone for joining us today. The webinar topic is Explore the new Coordinates version 10 user interface. And from Coordinates today, we have our sales engineer, Eli Chadwick. And for questions, we have product managers, Hamish Campbell and Jonathan Ball. And I'm Anne Harper, the Chief of Staff. So Coordinates' purpose is to make data access workflows really easy and connect users with the data that they need. And this UI is the biggest change that we've made for our users in our history. It is design first. At Coordinates, we have separate product and design teams, and our teams have done a huge amount of R&D over the last 3 years and have built this new UI to make the tasks that you need to do really smooth and easy. It is a big change and we want to make sure that it works well for you. So please do get in touch if you have any feedback for us. Today we're going to give you a tour through this new UI, and this is going to be led by our sales engineer, Eli Chadwick. The webinar will take around 30 minutes. We are recording this and we will share a link with you and a few other people after it's done. If you have any questions, we have the Q&A function. So if you could type any of your questions in there, and we've got Hamish and Jonathan at the ready to leap in and answer those. And if there's any that we could cover off if we have time at the end, we'll do that too. On that note, I will hand over to Eli.
Cool. Well, welcome everyone to this webinar. I'm extremely happy to be presenting the new Coordinates user interface. It's been a long time in development and it was actually switched over last week, so some of you may have had a chance to have had a play with it already. I'm going to go through the user interface, look at different methods of data discovery, show you how data sets are presented, and then go through a few simple to slightly more complicated use cases just to give you a feel for how you might navigate around the platform, find the layers that you're interested in, and interact with them, be that download or from a programmatic perspective. I just wanted to cover off this slide first because it gives good context around how the platform hangs together. We're in the middle here, coordinates.com. Our landing site is coordinates.com. So when you come there, you come to our website. We are based in AWS and it's a multi-tenanted environment with a number of publishers in their own little areas publishing data up to the platform. So over on the left, we've got a subset of our customers. LINZ is quite well known, a few other central and local government organizations and some commercial entities. What they all have in common is the desire to get geospatial data on the internet and into the hands of its users really as simply as possible. They publish their data up to coordinates.com. When you have a business plan with Coordinates, you have your own little area where you have your own URL with its own domain. You can fully brand it out to your own colors and corporate identity. And essentially end users will come to your site and think that they're on a site that's managed entirely by yourselves. Under the hood, Coordinates is providing all the tools for data management, data publishing, and the publishers themselves are responsible for the configuration and content on the site. At the other end of the pipeline, we've got well in advance of 150,000 users now. We're based predominantly in New Zealand and Australia, although we've got quite a large presence in America as well. So the easiest way to get cracking is if I jump into the site itself. A few things to cover off straight off the bat. From a navigation perspective, we have the following buttons at the top of the screen. The Manage button is only available if you are a paid seat and can therefore have the rights to publish data up to the platform. So if I go in here, this is just the back end of Coordinates. I'm not really going to cover that off today. We're going to look at it more from a user perspective and how they interact with the platform. So the Data tab, this opens up the data browser. These are all the data sets that are available. You can see here that we've got 26,000 odd data sets available on the Coordinates platform. So from coordinates.com, you can see any data that's been published by any of our publishers from their individual sites that has been made available to the general public. Publishers have the choice to publish only to named users if they want, in which case coordinates.com won't be seeing it. And then on the other side here, we've got this map button. So that turns on and off the map viewer. I can change the layout of the screen by making it more mappy and or more data browser. oriented. It really depends what phase of your operation you're at as to how you might set that up. You can also turn off the data browser or turn off the map. So for starters, I'll go ahead and turn the map off. We're in the data discovery phase here, and there's a number of different methods that you can use to locate the data that you're interested in. So just to give you a feel of how it works, initially these are data sets that have been sorted by recently updated or popularity. So they're the most used data sets, I guess you could say. If I click on one of these data sheets, it gives you information about the data set. So in this case, this is a layer that was published by Linz. That's the URL that'll take you straight off to Linz's site. On the info tab here, if I go down, we tell you what kind of a data type it is. So this is a line layer with 482,000 features in it. We give metrics around the data, how many views, exports, and update frequency or recency. And then some about information. Again, this is all being managed by Linz or the publisher that was responsible for it. So you can have links off to data dictionaries, further information, whatever the publisher had put into the data set. We support Creative Commons out of the box. Quite important, it gives end users a notion of what they can and cannot do with the data. From a metadata perspective, we support ISO 19115 and Dublin Core. These can be downloaded as XML or PDF straight from this data sheet. Under details, layer ID, it's quite important. You need to know if you're going to interact with a layer programmatically or by one of our services, you need to know which layer it is, so you can copy that out here. This is explaining more about the data. What was the coordinate reference system that it was published in this case, NZTM, the feature count, and then a list of the attributes that are in the data set. So quite an important founding principle of Koordinates is that users need to be given enough information so they can do an appraisal of each data set before they commit to downloading in any particular data set. A lot of our layers are enormous, so you wouldn't want to just pull it down and then have a look. So we attempt to give as much information around the context of the data set prior to the decision to download it. Some information around the history, when it was last updated, which is the primary key, just so that users can know which one it is when they've pulled it down. And then a data sample. So in the old user interface, this was where you accessed the data table. This has changed. This is now just a sample of the data, giving you an idea about the attribution and what sorts of cell contents you can expect once you've downloaded it. So again, it's that appraise the data set concept. If I want to add that to a map, we're happy so far. This is the layer that I think I want. I can now close out of the info. I can close out of the data browser, and I can go into a very map-centric view of the layer. I can click around the map, and that'll do a spatial query. In this case, we're going to go down, have a look at Mount Taranaki. In the spatial results window here, I can jump around and look at different features that are in the map and check out the elevation. One of the concepts we're going for with this map viewer is we refer to it as GIS Lite. It's a number of our customers don't have GIS desktop software nor the ability to operate it, but they do have a need to be able to query GIS data, be it in their organization or just on the internet at large. So using this interface, it gives them the ability to load the data into a map without knowing too much GIS information, and then, for instance, find out that that particular contour is 1240. For a lot of people, that's as far as they need to go. But probably one of the most frequently done things on the Coordinate platform is to download the data. So from this map, you can do things like toggle the street, terrain, or satellite-based maps, or you can go into the export flow. So if I click export, by default, the cropping area is the area that you were viewing in the map viewer. The idea here is this is a national data set. You may only be interested in Mount Taranaki, so why download the whole entire thing? You can remove the crop, or you can zoom to the crop. Over here, the coordinates reference, whatever the publisher published the layer in, that will be the projection that you downloaded in, NZTM default for New Zealand these days, but you could do a reprojection to any other like sensible GDAL supported projection. I'll just leave it at Traverse Mercator. Under vector, for vector data, you can download it in the following formats. So you can grab it as a shapefile, Esri. You can also get an Esri file geodatabase. We support map info tabs and MIF files. If you want to pull it down as a CSV, which is a nice vendor agnostic format that'll go into most GIS systems, that'll have an attribute containing the geometry as a well-known text attribute. GeoPackage is also a vendor agnostic approach, feeds into most ecosystems. It's basically a SQLite implementation. You can also grab it as KML, a DWG for CAD, or a GeoPDF. So I'll just leave that as GeoPackage. And once I've got this all set up, simple chop of a layer. If I hit create export, the server in the background is going to do a clip zip. And then when I download it, the ship. I don't actually need to be hanging around here. If I can close out of there. Up here, we have a progress meter. I can jump in and check the progress of any of my downloads. So I can just leave that to cook away and go about my business, which is exactly what I'm about to do. Another important concept of these map viewers is they are attached to your coordinates user ID. So for instance, if I close out of the data browser, I can see the map here. If I shut the map down, it still exists down on my toolbar. I can now fire off another map viewer. You can have multiple map viewers. When you log out of coordinates, log back in again, you'll have the same map viewer sitting there, same configuration, and you can jump back in. We also track a history of map viewers, so you can come in here and open up any previously configured map viewers, and it just gives you a record of all the things that you've done. So if you have a frequently done task, you only have to do it once, and then you can come back in, you can export the data again, you can view the data, spatial queries, etc. One other thing I didn't mention is from here, this is now where you view the data table. So this is the entire data table. You can search for records in the data, and you can use this to navigate around the map. So it's a fairly simple use case, one layer, cropped, downloaded, easy peasy. The next thing I wanted to look into was we've got this new regions filter. So if I click on the region filter, what happens here is every layer that's been uploaded has a map extent. Those map extents, we've done a spatial operation to work out what geotag they exist within. And then from there, we can allocate them to different areas. So the idea here is, say you want some data from North America, USA. I'm going to go and find some data from New York. And then I've got all the counties broken down. You can navigate around there, or you can simply say, give me all the New York layers. So that's now a filter of every data set that we have determined to be in New York. I'm going to add the New York parcels to the map. And I'm also interested in the sewer data. And somewhat topically, I'm also interested in flood information. So having added those all to the map, I can once again close out of the data browser. I can zoom in, I can click on the map, and that's going to show me what I have selected. And then from here in the spatial viewer, any layers that I've hit will be available in this spatial results. So I can query around, say for instance, I was interested in parcels that were vulnerably close to the flood plain. I can cruise around, have a look at the different things. Again, GIS Lite, maybe that's far enough, maybe it isn't. So if I wanted to export, again, I'm in here, I'm exporting, I can remove the crop and take the entire data sets. I'm going to stick with GeoPackage. This is NAD 83. I could change that to a different projection. Happy with that. I'm hitting create export. So the previous export that I was doing is now completed. I can download that just by clicking on the link. That will download the data set. I jump into here, into my downloads. Here's the data set that I've just downloaded. So in it, I have a GeoPackage that contains the contours information. It has XML metadata and then some textual about. So I've there successfully downloaded one layer. I jump back into the interface. The next layer is also ready, so I can pull that down as well. So that's two layers pulled down. So that's how you would deal with a geographic filter. Next filter I wanted to look into, so I'll remove this. I can create a new map. I wanted to look into publisher filters. So we have, as I mentioned earlier, a bunch of different publishers that are publishing data up to our platform. Under the publisher filter, you can drill down into layers that have been published by the various people that are contributing to the Koordinates platform. So here, if I go to stats, I can see data only that has been published by Stats NZ. I might be interested in this statistical area too, so I can add that to my map. I also want to grab a layer from lins, so I can filter by lins. I'm interested in a roads layer. I know that it's of type vector line. While I'm in here, actually, we support vectors, points, lines, and polygons. We also are about to release support for point clouds, which will be exciting. We also do raster data and grid data. These are all the geospatial formats that we support. You could also download data that was, or publish data that is a table. So that's simply a table without a geometry in it. Sets, when a publisher groups a bunch of stuff together, and you can download the set of data. Repositories is a cart repository, which I'm not going to go into too heavily today, but that's our new distributed version control system. And then we also have facilities for sharing documents. So if I jump back to here, I want to find some road data. And I'm interested in this New Zealand roads section. This is worth pointing out while we're at it. You can favorite a data set. So say if you've got data sets that you use frequently, I can come in here and click starred. Then when I come back, I can filter by starred, and I have a set of data sets that I'm interested in. So you can store them in a map viewer. You can also star them as a favorite. If I add that to the map now, I can jump out of here. I can zoom on in, have a look. And again, I can, if I want to, jump into the export flow, export this data. These are still just vector layers, so same old formats. I won't bother to grab this one, unnecessary work on the server. But suffice to say, that is how you would go about filtering by publisher. So the next thing I wanted to show you was, let's fire off a new map. I can clear out all my filters. And I'm going to start by looking at some of the data sets that I have favorited. So if I click on the star button up here, these are all layers that I have, whilst cruising around the platform, found and thought that could be something I want to look at later. In particular, I'm interested in doing some work around Foxton. So I found these Manawatu aerials. I'm going to add them to my map. It zooms into the area that you're looking at. I also found some street address data for the Foxton area, so I can add that to my map. I am interested in the roads section, which I had just started earlier, so I can also add that to my map. And the last thing I wanted to add for this particular task was some building outlines. So in order to find the building outlines, I know that they're published by lins, so I can filter by lins. I also know that they are of type polygon. So I've filtered down my set to just data that's published by lins and is of type polygon. And now I'll do a search for buildings data. And this is the layer that I'm interested in. I can open up the info tab, just more metrics around it, more information, just to confirm that it's the right layer for me. And then I can add that to the map. So now I'm back in a map only view. Another thing I can do here is I'm going to rename this map to Foxton Beach, just so that it makes a bit of sense to me in the future. So I'll save that. That now names it Foxton Beach down here. If I close it out and reopen it, it'll be stored in the histories as Foxton Beach. I could have named all of these maps. If I jump out of the data browser, zoom into an area, I can again spatial query around the map. I can look at all the different features. Again, that may be far enough, or maybe I want to download this particular area. So Again, it's back into the export. Here, I'm going to crop it by the map viewer. So I was interested in this particular area. It's going to be NZTM projection. I'm happy with GeoPackage. I can see all the layers that I've got in here. For the raster layer, we support GeoTIFF, JPEGs, GeoJPEGs, URDAS, usual suspects. And so once I've got all of that configured, I can then come over here and say, create export. That again is going to create my export. Once it's available, I can download it. So there's a few different use cases for methods of interacting with the platform. Just to show you how, say if I closed out of my Foxton Beach and I closed out of all of my map layers, I can come into the map viewer and say history. I want to see my New York data again, or I want to see the Foxton Beach map. And so they're all stored there with the same configuration, the same layers configured, and these are same extents. So that'll just exist there for as long as you need it. Now, I mentioned earlier that one of the biggest use cases is to download data. So it's discover the layers, configure a map viewer, download the information that you need. We also have a bunch of services hanging off all of this data, and they can be accessed from in here. Just before you are about to do your export, we remind you that the services exist. So for instance, for this raster layer, I can see that I can hit it by WMTS. We give the URL that you would need to access the layer. You can manage or create API keys in here, plug them into this holder for an API token. And then you can grab that URL, you could put that into QGIS or ArcPro or a web map, and that will be accessing the layer by WMTS. And for the vector layer here, same thing with the WFS. So you can come in here, again, create or manage your API keys, grab the URL to the layer and plug that into your consuming client application. A couple of other things in here under change sets. What a lot of organizations do is they will download a layer, have it sitting locally, and then they will create a change set. What a change set is I want to grab, I can say create change set. I can determine what period or date range I'm interested in, and then hit generate. That's going to make a CSV of just the changes. So all the additions, modifications, and deletions, which I can apply to the data set that I hold locally. So yeah, as I say, there's a number, you can do that programmatically. You can access it through here manually. It's really like was one of the next advances on keeping your data up to date locally. The last thing that I want to touch on here is we have just released this desktop application. It's attached to your Koordinates ID as well. So anything that I'm doing up on the platform, I can see from my desktop. I could download these from here. It has map viewers. It's got the same UI as the site itself, and it even has the same starred data set. So whatever I've tagged up in the cloud, I can now access from my desktop. There's no license associated with this, and it's just a really convenient way of keeping data updated locally. An example of which would be if I jump into this repository without going into too many details. Essentially, when you use this app, you're going to clone a layer down. You're going to get the repository with all the changes of that data set over time. I can scroll down through this timeline and I can look at all the changes that happened over time. So I can see that the data set was created in 2019. Each update that LINs have made to this comes through as a different commit. And I cloned this layer down in October. Since then, there have been 4 updates released. So in essence, I'm subscribed to the data set. I can see the changes that happened. Over on the right, we've got a map diff. And so each edit that has happened in this update, I can interrogate in here, see what the changes were. And then if I wanted to, it's simply apply updates, and that will take the latest data and apply it to my local data set. So that's an interesting method of interacting with the platform. We're going to be doing a bunch more stuff using this cart. I won't go into it in too much depth now. That's probably a conversation for another day. But the final thing I wanted to highlight was that we have also built a plugin for QGIS, and the QGIS uses, again, the same UI. So you can open up data sheets, look at the information, decide whether you want to use it. You don't have to actually leave QGIS now. You can just say, I want to add that. That's going to add that layer to a project as a service. And then I could also say, great, I want a copy of that data locally, and so I'll do a clone, which I won't because it's enormous. But really just to let you know that it's coming imminently. This is already live. People can already use it. And it's just a method for getting around the Coordinates platform without actually even having to go to coordinates.com. So we think that will be quite a heavily utilized feature in the future. I think I'll leave that there for now.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Eli. I thought I would just jump in with, I was watching the questions come up, and there are a few questions about the data. So I thought I'd just clarify what Coordinates does. We are the technology platform. So all the data comes from other people. You've got government agencies, private companies, and as we bring on more and more customers, they push their data into Coordinates so that there are publicly available data sets. People also use it to share privately in groups, but that's why we don't know much about the data sets themselves, because we focus on providing those tools to make it really easy for you to use. All right, well, thank you, everybody. We're going to send out this recording to you, and please watch out for our upcoming webinars. We plan to do one a month for the rest of the year, as we have so many parts of the product that we'd like to show people. If you have any questions, please do get in touch with us. We'd love to talk to you. So yeah, enjoy the rest of your afternoon.